Testing, testing. Testing 1 2, testing 1 2. Okay, we appear to be live. Let me pull it up on the other end. See what's going on here. I hate when it does that. Okay, there we go. Yep, looks like we're working. Oh, it's going to get recursive. Hey there, Chris. Doing all right, thank you. How are you, my friend? Make sure that's still working. Hey there, Chris. Just trying to get the chat plug-in working correctly, because darn thing decided to log out partially. It's very confusing. Anyways, hopefully we are going to be all right. Come on, baby. Work with me. Oh, cool. Did the density squats, huh? Hope those treated you well. How are you liking that density approach? Nice. Yeah, you know, I'm a really big fan of the density approach when it comes to training the squat. It's actually going to be a big thing I'm using moving forward in my own program, my next little training phase after the show, which is kind of the topic of today's live, is the post-competition training block I have in mind for myself. Before I dive into that, though, do we have any questions on the floor? Looks like there's quite a few of you here. I'm seeing 4 viewers. One of them might just be me spoofed, though, so maybe 3 of you. Please say hi if you are joining in, chat. Let me know if you have any questions. Otherwise, I'm going to dive in. Testing 1 2. And the reason why I'm looking down into my left here is this is where my phone is. Just lets me track the chat delay and all that stuff. Also, how are you guys liking the mic? I feel like the mic really ramped up the audio quality. Oh, it's funny. It's picking that up. Okay, doesn't look like there's any questions on the floor, so let me go ahead and dive in with what I have going on. Yeah, I think the echo is just coming from the fact that the mic is picking up my phone playing back the chat, which is just kind of funny, but, you know, what you gonna do? All right, let's make sure I got all this set up correctly here. Still getting used to the life of one of these cool streamer kids. All right, so looks all right, looks all right. All right, cool. So let's go ahead and dive in here with what I'll be doing for my own training off season. We're calling the program Askal, which is a Tagalog term. Pretty much means a street dog. It's also informally used to refer to a bastard child. And that's just something that I like to use that word because, you know, helps me remember where I come from. And, you know, I've been called a bastard on a few occasions, and my dad wasn't around, so I figured Joe DeFranco shouldn't be allowed to use that word. It's our word for those of us who did not have fathers growing up. I love Joe DeFranco, though. He's great. West Side for Skinny Bastards was one of the best programs I ever ran, and was also the inspiration for West Side for Chubby Bastards, which is definitely going to be one of my ongoing series with the programming world. All right, so taking inventory. Let's start with that, because I think that's always going to be the big thing here, is we want to talk about the situation report for the lifter in question. It's going to be me. So lifter wants to lose fat, strong on deadlifts and lacking press strength, no formal squat training as of recently. And last but not least, we're going to go with wants to prioritize pressing performance and yoke mass. So that's kind of what we're looking at here. Because after the competition, like I've talked about, I want to lose some weight. I want to get back into the lightweight division. I don't like being this heavy. I don't feel like it actually did much for my strength. I feel sloppy. Just not happy with it overall. And actually, I'd say my deadlift has suffered a bit due to the leverage changes. Again, I just want to be a little bit lighter. I find that I like how I look and how I feel more when I am lighter. In terms of being strong on the deadlift, how many goals do I typically allot for it really depends, Chris, on how long the block is going to be and how divergent the goals are. For myself, right, okay, I want to lose fat, retain deadlift strength, improve pressing strength. That's 3 goals. I think that's a good target. And then, on top of that, I want to add yoke mass. So that's, upper back, delts, traps, which is subservient to improving pressing strength. So you can see probably 2 to 3 goals, and then under those goals, I can have secondary sub-goals that feed into it, right? So let's say, for example, I was building a program where the lifter's priority is to build their deadlift strength as well as improve their conditioning. Underneath the deadlift strength, we might find out, okay, well, they've got relatively weak legs and a weak low back, so we want to also improve their front squat strength as well as their bent over barbell row strength. So then, those goals feed into the main goal. And then conversely, if we're looking to improve their conditioning, we could probably train their squat using a density protocol to help drive conditioning upwards. And then we can also add in a lot of rowing for their cardiovascular conditioning, because that in turn is subservient to improving their barbell row. So then those all feed into the bigger goal of improving deadlift strength while also improving their conditioning. So I'd say that, 2 to 3 big goals. And then from there, once you have those in mind, you can then get oriented everywhere else by having those smaller tasks and goals feed into the bigger focus of training. I think that's a great way to go about it personally, because what that does is by having the big picture front and center, we can then build into the rest of it by the smaller pieces. Whereas if I just said, okay, the goals are bigger biceps, bigger delts, and bigger tricepticons, and then tried to reverse engineer to the main focus, which is actually, let's say, improving pressing strength and dropping body fat, it gets a bit more complicated. It's kind of like if you're buying a house, right? What do you focus on first? You focus on the location of the house, you focus on the quality of the building, stuff like the color of the rug, or whether the oven faces a certain direction in the kitchen isn't as important. Sure, those things are nice, they're little bonuses, but location is your first priority in real estate. That's the number one determinant usually of the value of a house. So I would say that we focus on the big things, which in this case is going to be the goals, and then that determines sub-goals that feed into them. Hope that answers the question. I feel like I kind of got off on a tangent there, but hey, that's a fun question for me to answer. I'll wait for you to kind of reply, let the chat catch up here. All right. Doesn't look like anyone has anything to say, so Marky Mark is going to keep on. Okay, perfect. Thank you, Chris. By the way, Chris, love that you're always asking questions on these things. The rest of you who are hanging out here, please ask questions. I love that when you do. All right. So let's talk about, we talked about the situation report and goals. We're going to do a 4-day-a-week program. Conjugate, of course. And let's talk about the order. So normally when I run a conjugate program, it's lower intensive, upper intensive, lower developmental, upper developmental. I'm going to change the order a little bit here because I want to think about my priorities in training. So we're going to go upper intensive to start the week. Then we're going to go lower intensive thereafter. Then we'll go into our developmental days, upper dev, lower dev. Now lower intensive days, it's going to be deadlift focused. It usually is for me. I have found that for myself when I train the deadlift, I need to train it with intensity but not a lot of volume. Whereas the squat, especially because I have not been very focused on it, what I want to do is I want to get more volume at more moderate intensities. So squat is going to slot in on my lower developmental day. Now this is where it's going to get a little more intricate because with that pressing strength, I do want to improve my log press as well as my dipping strength. Those are kind of my two upper body pressing movements that I want to dial in on. And that also locks into improving my yoke, right? That upper body aesthetics, because big dips and big log press mandate you have a very impressive upper body. So I do not want to do log on my upper intensive day, because again, I want to train this with more volume to get more practice with it. And also, as I learned from this last training block, anytime log comes before the deadlift, my performance really suffers on the deadlift, but I don't gain much on the log. So we're going to move log to upper developmental day. Like so. We're also going to put dips on upper developmental day because these two will be trained week in, week out. Then from here, we're going to go a little bit further and we'll start kind of slotting in movements. Now, upper intensive day, what's nice about this is because of how I'm laying out this split, this is essentially going to be a high intensity bodybuilding day. And with a bodybuilding upper focus day, press variations are going to be seated and supported, which means they're not going to create inroads for fatigue with my low back before moving into my deadlift. So here we can do seated press variations. We can also do incline variations. We could even do floor press variations. Now, I probably won't be doing too many barbell or axle bench press variations, like true bench laying on the bench variations. And the reason why is I don't want day one here to get too much pec stimulus, because then my pecs are going to get tight, and that'll actually impede my performance on upper developmental day. So we're going to go ahead and just slot off. If I do want to bench, it'll be here on my upper developmental day. Make sense? And then, as always, this is going to be something like, let me write the weekdays out. Monday, Tuesday, typo. Tuesday, and the Wednesday is always my day off. So Thursday, and last but certainly not least, Friday. And what's nice about this too is the deadlift and deadlift related training such as barbell rows and good mornings, it actually doesn't fatigue my low back that much, but I will get an extra day for them to recover before I move into my log press day, which is definitely not a bad thing. And then in turn, having the squats after log, that means my legs won't be as tired because, deadlift day I'm not doing that much squatting. So I'll have fresh legs going into my log press session, so that gives me the best possible chance to improve that particular movement. Now, let's go ahead and start filling out these days a little bit more. I'll ask you, chat, which day should I do first? Should I focus on filling out the lower intensive day or the lower developmental day? Which one do you want to see me talk about first? Wish I could just play the Jeopardy theme while I wait for some responses here. Yes, I definitely do high bar squats, front squats, or SSB squats. Those are going to be the squats I focus in on in the off season. Lower developmental, great choice. So let's go squat. So with the squat, I'm going to be using a density protocol here. I've written several different density protocols, and right now I'm just lining out the split. And the actual protocol itself, you're going to wind up seeing it when I do release West Side for Chubby Bastards. Number 2, because what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to put in my program as an appendix in that as well. So if you did want to run it as a 4-day strongman emphasis program, you'll have that option in there. So we're going to run a squat density wave, And it's going to be probably a 5 to 6 week wave. And even then, you could actually change the squat variation every wave. So you could do high bar squats one wave, front squats another wave, SSB another wave, and even Zercher squats on another wave. I'm going to do density plus fatigue singles. I like that idea there, because if I'm having a good day and I rip through my density sets and I've got the energy, there's no reason why a few fatigue singles at 10 to 15% over what my density sets were is going to be a negative for me, especially because I'm not that relatively strong on the squat. It will not create a big recovery inroads for me long term. And it's on Friday, so that means I have the weekend to recover as well. And the weekend usually means extra steps and extra calories because, well, it's the weekend. I'm not at work. And then, upper intensive being mainly supported pressing variations, that functionally gives me 3 days for that to heal up before I get to deadlifting, which even with sore legs doesn't affect me too much. I'm a very back and hip dominant deadlifter. I have enough leg drive to get her moving, but whatever. All right, so that is going to be the squat phase of it. Then after that, we got to do some single leg work here because single leg work is important. Probably going to be a reverse lunge variation using that 8x4 method. So that is going to be, oh yeah, no, fatigue singles rock. I really do love them. I'm actually going to be putting them in the upper developmental day as well, where we're going to be doing a wave approach plus fatigue singles. All right, I'm just going to put that note there before I forget. So then we'll use that reverse lunge, probably a Zercher variation of the reverse lunge. I love Zercher reverse lunges. I think they're just one of those movements that is so beneficial for the strongman athlete. Then after the reverse lunge, I want to get a vertical pull in here. Could be lat pull downs, could be chins. Probably going to be chins though, because that's just a great variation for me to sprinkle in. Yeah, because I'm also going to do a vertical pull on lower intensive day, which is probably going to be a BTN lat pull down. So let me just put that over here before I forget. Alrighty, cool. Lunges, chins, and then after squats plus the reverse lunges, low back will be a little tight, not wrecked, but it's going to need some recovery, so some chins will help stretch it out. And then this is a great spot to throw in the Zercher back extension. I did a reel on this recently. It's also on my YouTube channel in the Shorts tab. It's probably my favorite back extension variation right now. I don't want to do it on Tuesday because I will say the last time I did that particular movement, my spinal erectors were cooked for probably a good 2 or 3 days. So I don't want to do them on Tuesday and have that still be potentially fatigued going into my Thursday log workout because of how much strain the log does tend to put on my low back. So putting it here after, that's going to help build more resilience and strengthen the low back, but not impede my development on the log, nor is it going to make too much inroads against my deadlift because I will have a full 72 hours before going into the deadlift session. I think that really slots in nicely there. So we got 4 exercises here. Let's throw in Turkish get-ups. These are something I want to side quest in the off season. I want to build my Turkish get up to 30 to 35% of my best log push press. What about reverse hyper? I'll be honest, Chris, I've done reverse hyper on and off. I don't like it. I have found it doesn't do much for me. The few times I've actually tried to focus in on it, it feels nice. It feels like a tonic movement, but it doesn't feel like anything special. I think for some people it works better than others. For myself, I think due to the nature of the movement, my spine is somewhat flexion intolerant and it really just does not like that exercise. So it's not one that I'm going to be putting in my own programs, but you could certainly do them as well. And the reason why I'm putting the chins in there too is just to get more lat and upper back development, because that is also going to help support a big overhead press. And I kind of have it in the back of my head. I want to do street lifting eventually, which is weighted dips, weighted chins, and a max back squat, as well as a weighted muscle up. So that feeds into fat loss. So you can see how there's so many different moving parts going on, but I'm still trying to balance everything else out. And also weighted calisthenics are just a good off-season thing, as I've talked about. In that Strongman Side Quest video that I dropped this weekend, getting that chin up to 100 pounds would be a good option for me. Yeah, ending the day with Turkish get-ups. I like this Friday session here. Friday workouts, it's the last day of the week. I don't want to kill myself. I also want the workout to be a bit more brief. And this would be a pretty brief workout. Probably take me maybe an hour, 75 minutes if I'm giving myself more rest. I love the density protocol for squats, specifically because I can kind of lollygag a lot when I train the squat, because it is an awkward, unpleasant movement for me due to how I'm built. But the only way to get better at it is to freaking do it. So we'll go ahead and slot that in. Yeah, that is going to be the lower developmental day. I like that. I think that looks really good overall. Naturally, we can play with the movements. Maybe the Zercher back extension becomes a good morning down the road. Doesn't matter too much. It just gives me some sort of work to play with here. Let's go ahead and, we'll work backwards. Let's go ahead and do upper developmental day here. So I'm going to do my log approach. And what I'm going to do here is a pretty standard developmental wave. Something like probably go 6 sets of 5. Then we would go 8 sets of 4 and then 12 triples. And we'd be doing a log complex where I might do something like 2 paused push press, 1 paused push jerk, and then 1 regular push jerk. I'll play with that through the weeks. Actually, you know what? No, I'm not going to be doing any push jerks during the developmental time. I need to focus more on actual just pure push pressing strength. And I would say that that's something that's probably cost me, is I train the log with strict press primarily, and then just hoped it would directly carry over to my push jerk and I kind of sidestep that middle thing of push pressing. You can't go wrong with a good, strong push press. That's going to build good, raw strength. And then from there, all it takes is a few weeks of skill work to develop the skill of the push jerk. So let's go ahead. We're going to make that a log push press wave. And, this will be something like, let's go 6 by 5. 6 by 5, 8 by 4, then 12 by 3, and then we'll have paused dip on first rep of each set. There we go. Something like that with a pause dip on the first rep of each set will be really good for helping improve and reinforce my rack position. Might even make that the first and second rep. I can play with that. Again, we're just letting out the split today, not like I'm actually making the whole program. And with it being a 5-week wave too, I'm going to play with the set rep scheme. That's what's nice about this, is that's what's fun about programming is, we get our general ideas and then we can always go from there. So that'll be the log push press, and then dips here. I'm going to run a pretty basic progression. Top set, 5 to 8, and then 2 more sets of 10 to 12. Nothing fancy. And then, I do want to do some sort of bench here. Let's probably go with a close grip axle bench. And that one we'll probably train high reps. It's maybe like a 15 to 20 rep program. Like that would be kind of fun. 15 to 20 rep program. Why not? Alrighty. So now we've got 3 pressing movements there. That's more than enough pressing for the day for sure. Then we're going to get some tricep, bicep. Let's throw in a Lou raise right here. Perfect. Like I said, rarely go over 6 exercises in a training day. Yeah, volumizing sets, that's definitely a good option. I personally don't like adding sets. It's one of my least favorite progressions unless you have a density aspect to it. Reason being, to go from, let's say, 3 by 12 to 4 by 12, unless you're doing that same amount of volume in a similar or less amount of time, I don't think it's eliciting the adaptations we want, especially in the focus of the strongman sport and hypertrophy work. We want to get that proximity to failure as well as improving the density of the work if we're talking specific to strongman. So if I'm adding sets, I would say that I'd argue that my density approach is volumizing sets, but it introduces a time domain element, which I really like because strongman relies so heavily on a time domain element. I know Bromley, he has a lot of volumizing sets in his programs. It works great. Bromley is a very, very intelligent programmer. Nothing but praise for him. But I just personally don't like the idea of blitzing high volume unless we introduce a time constraint there. Otherwise, it just makes the workout take longer. And also, being Thursday, Friday, my workout time is a little more limited just as I'm pretty booked. So I'm just going to go with that. Yeah, tricep, bicep. That looks good. That looks good. Alrighty. And so that'll be upper developmental day. Nothing too crazy there. All right, now lower intensive day, the deadlift day. So I'll obviously have my max effort deadlift variation. I am getting away from 1 rep maxes. Just need to take a break from them. Really, mixed feelings because I still want to try and get that 635 before I turn 35, but walking a tightrope right now, I don't know. Regardless, what I'm going to do here is we're just going to use a top set of 5 to 8 and then a back off set of 10 to 12. 2 hard sets of deadlifts is plenty for me. I don't need a ton of volume on the deadlift, especially working with the intensity that I'm working at. And I don't want to use all of my available recovery resources for building a deadlift when my focus is going to be elsewhere. And in general, the stronger you are at something, the less of it you need to maintain it. So let's go with that. All right. Then after the deadlift, let's go ahead, barbell row. This is another movement that I want to side quest. I want to get to the point, I've talked about it before, you should be able to barbell row 50% or so of your max deadlift for sets of 5 to 8. I've got a long way to go in that regard. My most recent deadlift max was 615, which awesome. So, by that metric, I should be able to barbell row, 310, which no, I cannot. I'd wager I could maybe do 2 plates with leg drive in English for a set of 3 to 5 on a good day right now. With body English, so especially because I'm talking about the barbell row in the context of transference to the sport of strongman with body English. If I wanted to do strict rows, I'd be doing something like a seal row or a chest supported row. I think a standing bent over barbell row should absolutely have body English. It's almost like it's too much of a nuisance to try and make that a truly strict row variation, because as it gets heavier, you're naturally going to use a little bit of English. So if you want to make it strict, just eliminate it. Add constraints so that you can't use English in it. And I think rows with English are fantastic. And if you look at a lot of the most successful deadlifters, it's a fairly common movement to see them program. Pete Rubish used them. Ed Cohen used them. Those are just 2 guys that come off the top of my head. Shane German with MST, he programs the row with English. We're not using it as a bodybuilding exercise, right? We're using it to be subservient to build the deadlift, especially making it nasty, a little ugly with leg drive and all that. What it's going to do is it gets your upper back and midline used to absorbing and controlling the force of a big impact from a big weight. If you're prying an Atlas stone off the ground, if you're carrying sandbags, if you're trying to not fold in half under a very heavy deadlift, especially if the bar has a lot of pop off the floor, that's where we want to think we want to get a little gnarly with it. And I think that is endemic of a larger problem with the discourse on training. Feels like it is either powerlifters or bodybuilders that really control the dialogue. You post a touch and go bench press. Oh, that doesn't count. Oh, you got to pause the bench. That's, cheating. I'm not out of meat. Who says that I have to pause it in my training pit? Who cares? So that's just a little side tangent there, as I am apt to do on these lives, is to wander off and start talking about things that matter to me. All right, so back on task. Lower intensive. Heavy deadlift, some barbell rows. Then after that, I'm going to move into a behind the neck lat pull down. I really love the BTN lat pull down. Opens up the chest and shoulders, feels good on my low back. Ever since I started doing it consistently, my shoulders actually gotten healthier. It's a big part of the reason that weighted dips, I think, is why I was able to finally get a 3-plate bench press after all these years. My shoulder feels better than it ever has. When I started doing BTN lat pull downs, I know some people freak out about them. Oh, it's hard on the rotator cuffs. Oh, it's hard on the shoulder. Well, bicep curls are hard on the bicep. It's kind of the point. That being said, if it's something that does cause you a lot of undue pain, don't do them behind the neck. Just do them to the front. Doesn't really matter. I also like the behind the neck because it teaches you to pull with a more neutral spine, keeping the hips stacked over the shoulders. So that's beneficial for improving pressing mechanics. That's also beneficial for improving squat mechanics because we're keeping everything stacked and aligned. Helps with passively with low back recovery leading into my log session. So I think that slots in beautifully there. And then after that, I need to get some hamstring work in here. Let's just go with banded hamstring curls. We'll just go super high reps on that, you know, sets at 20 to 30, nothing too complicated. The gym that I'm at, I don't like the machine very much for hamstring curls, just doesn't feel that good. And, you know, I could do Nordics, put that on there, banded hamstring curls, or Nordics, anything like that. GHR, back extension is good for hams, just some sort of hamstring work. Simple enough. And then we'll get some ab work in here, probably something like 10 minutes where I just go ab wheel, side bends, and hanging leg raises. Very basic, but I think sometimes when it comes to stuff like ab work, we love to overcomplicate it. And especially on social media, you see all these ridiculous looking ab circuits that, frankly, no one's actually freaking doing them in their workouts. And most of us aren't even doing our ab work. So just like a 10-minute density set for abs with a few things. You know, in Strongman Going Commando, I actually have that. I'll probably just lift it out of SGC and throw it into my Ascal program. Why not? It's a good progression. All right, and then last but certainly not least, upper intensive Monday. Let's talk about this day. So again, this is going to be our high intensity bodybuilding day. So we'll do main press, which would be an incline or overhead variation. And it's going to be a supported press. And with this, we're going to use my CBUM inspired max effort. And what that is a set of 5, a set of 8, then you drop 20% for max safe reps. Pretty simple operation there. Reason that the CBUM Max inspired is, a while back I was reading up on some of his programming. I think it's important to study from multiple sources. And he had this workout that I really liked. It just said 2 sets of 5 to 8 and then a set of 10 to 12. So I like that a lot because I think it's important to train heavy in the lower rep range even if you are seeking hypertrophy. And, well, success leaves clues. CBUM looks incredible. But for me, as I looked at that, I didn't like the ambiguity of it. I'm someone who likes to make things a lot more cut and dry and having clear win conditions. So I was like, all right, what we'll do is we'll take whatever weight I'm using, we'll have a rehearsal set with a set of 5, and then we're going to take it out for a set of 8 or more if I'm feeling good that day. And when that second set is 8 or more, that means I can progress that lift next time I do it. And then after that set, drop 20% and just rep out, get a good sick pump. You know, why not? I think that's a great variation right there. That'll treat me real good. Then after our main press, let's go into a supplemental press. This one will probably be a dumbbell or DB variation here. And as far as programming that goes, you know what? Let's do this. What we're going to do there is we're going to go ahead and use another higher rep progression. Reason being, dumbbells challenge the stabilizers, but so do high reps. Why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone and improve my stability while also getting a great pump and just building some more upper body muscle mass by using dumbbells? I love dumbbells for high reps. I think it's just a fun way to train too. Down the road, I'll probably do a lower rep one. But again, we're just playing with the split, playing with the progressions here. I like that. Looks pretty good overall. Then let's also get some, let's go ahead and program out for, I'm going to put 2 tricep movements here. Then a bicep movement. Day before deads and rows. No, we will not. Yeah, the UHR progression would be really good to throw in there. I've got a few different ideas. I'm probably going to use, I'll probably just go ahead and take a little time and I'm going to make a shorter term version of the UHR progression, just a condensed cycle to have it fit within my 5-week rotation I'm planning to be running. Because the idea with Westside for Chubby Bastards 2 /Ascal is I want it to be a repeatable 5-week template. So something like the UHR progression, you know, that was made for Kenjigit. So all of that was for that 12-week program. UHR is a great progression. You could use it on its own. But for me, I think it will just be nice to kind of make a 5-week higher rep progression that slots in really easily. I might even have one already somewhere. I need to go through the archives, but I'm actually pretty sure I wrote a 5-week high rep isolation wave just as a standalone a while back. I could throw that in there. I mean, luckily I keep an archive of all this stuff I write out. So if I just dig through, I'll go through there, see if I don't find something, I'll make a new one. And that's what's half the fun of the game, right? It's just whipping out new progressions, modifying old ones, and then sometimes what I find is when I make new progressions and keep tinkering with them, I reverse engineer a different progression entirely. Welcome to the wonderful world of training. All right, so we're going to do this. No, we're not, actually. All right, anyways. So we'll have our 2 pressing variations here. You know, I need more arms, so we don't need to do 3 pressing variations on upper intensive. We'll do 2 tricep. We'll throw in a bicep, honestly. I'm not too worried about my biceps the day before my back workout. Reason being, I pull with a hook grip or I'm going to use straps. Barbell row, I'm going to use straps with a false grip. BT on that pull down so wide, I don't think biceps are going to impede me. If they do, I'll play with it. And then let's also throw in some rear delts of some sort. As far as the rear delts go, it could be face pulls, could be rear delt swings. Sort that all out later. Yeah, this looks pretty good. I like this. You know, we might even do supersets on the upper intensive day, like between every set of my main press, I do some band pull-aparts. Between every set of my supplemental press, I do some face pulls. Actually, I really like that idea, so let's go ahead. We're going to put that note right here. Superset with face pull. And then we'll put superset with band pull. Great. That'll also cut a little time off the workout. And this technically breaks my 6 exercise rule, but stuff like band pulls as a superset are so low volume and time demand, I'm not too concerned about that. And then let's also go ahead and throw this on here with the barbell row. We're also going to do shrugs with it. So after a set of rows, turn right around and do some shrugs with it to help build a bigger, nastier yoke. All right, there we go. That looks like a pretty fun week of training to me. So Monday I come in, I've probably had a little extra to eat over the weekend. I'm going to be slightly bloated. I'm going to not want to deadlift as a result of that because it'll impede positioning. So instead, a static pressing variation after a full weekend of having fun and indulging a little bit means I'm going to be more stable in my presses, especially as seated ones, so then I can squeeze more out of them. Then we'll go into a super high rep dumbbell pressing variation or even a machine variation thereafter. Then we'll hit the biceps and then the triceps. And actually, one quick change I'm going to make right here. We're going to put biceps at the end. Reason being, that way I can keep my elbow sleeves on. Just makes it easy. I don't want to wear elbow sleeves while I'm working the biceps. It's kind of a nuisance. All right, there we go. That looks good. Lower intensive day. Nothing too fancy here, but I hit my heavy deadlift sets, do some barbell rows and shrugs, behind the neck lat pull downs, and then some sort of hamstring isolation, and then we will throw in some abs as well. I'll have my day on Wednesday to do whatever. That's going to be cardio. Thursday, upper developmental, got my log push press wave with fatigue singles, and I'm going to be doing pause dips. Then the dips themselves, dips twice. And then close grip axle bench. Again, I'm going to be pushing a high rep program there just to help build the triceps. I love pressing with the axle. It feels great on the elbows, doesn't beat them up near as bad. Lou raises, some triceps and biceps. Probably going to be a high rep axle curl there, just like Derek Poundstone used to do back in the day. And then Friday, lower developmental day, we're going to do some density and fatigue single work on the squat, reverse lunges, some chin-ups, Zercher back extensions or something similar. Again, it might turn into good mornings, who knows. And then last but not least, wrap up with some Turkish get-ups. This looks good. I like this program a lot. It's a little different, not starting my week with deadlifts, but I think that's exactly what I need, especially if I am going to prioritize upper body size and strength. Cool. All right, chat. Do I have any questions from you all out there? Now is the time. And thanks, Chris. I think it does too. It looks like a fun program for sure. And now it'll just be a matter of crafting the progressions that slot in thereafter. Luckily, that's not a very complicated thing to do. Just takes a little time and a little creativity. Oh, good question. So the idea with this is I want it to be a 5-week repeatable program. So then what would happen is, let's say I run this for 5 weeks, then I could make some changes such as changing out The squat might switch to a front squat or a Zercher squat. I might switch the barbell row out for a seal row. On the max effort days, the intensive days, that lift will not change every week. I'm not a big believer in changing your max effort lift every single week. I think you need at least 3 to 5 weeks with a movement to extract the maximal benefit from it. So on those, I'll probably change those, every 3 weeks. Depends on if I start stalling on them. I'd say that because of what I'm looking to accomplish, I don't need to worry too much about how long I stick with the max effort lift as long as I am making progress on it and I'm not bored. Once I get bored, that's also a good tell that it's time to change it out. I love the idea of, building my rep strength on the deadlift. I've always kind of had it in my back pocket that I'd like to build to eventually pull 500 for a set of 10 or 600 for a set of 5. So we'll see what happens there. Yeah, 5-week program is what I'm thinking, and then I can just change out the movements and make this a reusable template, sort of like how 5-3-1 is a quote-unquote 3-week program, but you can keep running cycles of it over and over and over. I do make some longer-term programs, but I find for myself is I like shorter training waves. If I were peaking for a show and I was 12 weeks out, I would actually do something much more specific. This is my, off-season program while I just sort myself out, and I think it will help me kind of chase down the goals that I have for myself in the off season. Great question, by the way. I could run the 5-week cycle indefinitely, run 3 cycles of it. That's 15 weeks. That's good, solid training block, especially if I just go a little heavier, on the log push press through each subsequent wave. I can recalibrate it based off my fatigue single. I like that. How about it, chat? Any other questions for me? I'm not it's not like he's like the greatest person in the world to me. I have immense respect for and look up to physique athletes, but to say that I'm a huge fan of bodybuilding is not an accurate statement. He's just someone that, you hear a lot about him. Everything I've read about him, from what I've seen, he seems like a really cool, down-to-earth guy, and he gives good advice. And I like his programming style. And he's just kind of fun to use as an example because you always get this idiot take on social media. Bodybuilders aren't strong. Meanwhile, C-Bum's out here shoulder pressing 90s, 120s. He's strong as hell. And you'll also see him even use the Smith machine to squat because he likes it. So I like him as a reference point. Oh, have a good day, Chris. Thanks for joining us for the live. So I just like him as a reference point because he doesn't major in the minors. I'll have to look into how he barbell rows. I actually have not seen that, so that'll give me something to look at a little later today, so I appreciate you pointing me in the direction of that. Yeah, he's just someone that, he's strong, he's jacked, he's got a good head on his shoulders. You don't hear anything bad about him. So innately, I'm a fan, but I'm not a super fan, if that makes sense. He's just a great example and proof of concept that bodybuilders, physique athletes are not weak. I'm just so tired of that stupid take on social media. Or you've got all these people well, I don't train for bodybuilding. I train for strength. Meanwhile, you've got bodybuilders repping out these Muppets 1 rep max. It's also why I don't talk too much about 1 rep maxes and I don't put them even in my own programs that often. And in the sport of strongman too, right? The sport of strongman is strong 4 reps. Generally, it's a 4 rep sport. Obviously, you have 1 RMs showing up. But what builds a good 1 RM is good rep strength. Here's a very unpopular opinion. This is a hot take. If you're ready for a hot take, strongmen would do better training like bodybuilders than they would training like powerlifters. Take a strongman athlete, put them on a bodybuilding program, add in their compound movements, of course, cut volume a bit, and just train them to get off strong in those rep ranges. Show me a guy who's repping 600 for sets of 8 to 12 on the deadlift. He is going to kill it. Whereas you take another trainee who's only focused on building their 1 RM on the deadlift, their strength endurance is going to suffer. So you put them in a deadlift 4 reps. Let's say that, let's say that you got the guy who's doing 600 for sets of 8, but he never maxes out. Then you got the guy who's doing 700 for 1, but he never does anything more than a set of 3. Load the bar up, let's say, 650 for both of them. The guy who has been training the reps is going to do better. He's also going to have better conditioning. God, it's so true. It really is. It's just a lot of cope. It's kind of like you have the people who tell you like, well, I train for functional strength. Training for functional strength just means you have no actual strength and you're trying to find some way to cope with that. Just get strong. Get strong for singles, get strong for reps, get strong for ultra high reps. Eat sensibly and do your conditioning. If you can do these things, you're going to be so far ahead of the pack in so many regards. And obviously I like strongman. I'm really into it. But at day's end, you don't need to do strongman sport to get the benefits of training like a strongman. And what are the benefits of training like a strongman? You're strong for reps. You're strong from multiple angles. You've got conditioning to back up the strength as well. So then if you eat right, you're going to look incredible too. Not to say that bodybuilders, not to say that pro bodybuilders should train exactly like a strongman, but if you look at some other principles, there's a lot of transference. I think, again, the average strongman enthusiast should train more like a bodybuilder than they should a powerlifter. They're going to get more out of it. And that is yet another rant of mine for today. Man, I'm just going off today. Well, with that being said, chat, are there any more questions? Otherwise, I think we're good here. And friendly reminder, there is not going to be a live next week. Speak now or forever hold your peace. So that's a really broad question as far as favorite exercises go. I mean, you'd have to kind of break it down like in what context, if that makes sense. Yeah, I don't know. It's just like, that is such a wide question to ask, but in general, I love deadlifting and the deadlift loves me back. I really like the seated behind the neck prep. I'm just going to give you my 5 exercises that I really enjoy right now. Let's make this simple. And the 5 exercises I want to focus on because I think they rule. Axle deadlift with straps. I just think, if you can deadlift it on an axle, you can deadlift it on pretty much any bar from almost any elevation. So axle deadlifts with straps, that'd be a fun variation to throw into. Seated behind the neck shoulder press. I like how it opens up the chest and shoulders. I get a great delt pump. Feels awesome on my shoulders. Chin-ups, just because they're difficult for me, so that makes me want to get good at them. Dips. Dips have done more for my bench press than most exercises have. I really do think they're the reason I got to a 3-plate bench press. And then let's throw in for my last exercise, the barbell row, because I think it's going to do wonders for helping improve my deadlift. And it's something that I just need to get stronger at the barbell row to improve the deadlift long term. It's also great for building a strong back, build isometric low back strength so you don't get folded on the deadlift. So yeah, let's just go with those 5. So we're going to go axle deadlift with straps, seated behind the neck press, chin-ups, barbell rows. Wow, and I said one and I can't even remember it. Dips, there it is. Wow, I need more coffee. Okay, everyone, let's see here. I'm going to wait to see if there's any more messages. Let the thing catch up. Otherwise, I think this is a good stopping point. What a fun day. So when I do the barbell row, I pretty much try to emulate my deadlift position. I'm bent over as if I was in the start of my deadlift with a slightly wider grip. And I use leg drive as well, because again, I'm specifically doing it to maximize transference to my deadlift, because that's going to build upper back size and strength in a way that correlates maximally to my deadlift. Oh, it's, not that I'm so much in a hurry. It's just kind of like, seeing if there's any other major questions. And, don't hesitate to ever reach out to me one-to-one on Instagram, Coach Mark Estrabio. I'd happily answer more of your questions there. But yeah, as far as the barbell row goes, I really like doing it with a deadlift stance, a slightly wider grip, and a bit of body English. And that's going to help it improve the deadlift maximally. Now, if I were using it to just build more pure strength size in my back, and I wasn't worried about deadlift carryover, I would do it probably on an incline bench or a flat bench, like a seal row. That way, I'm not going to cheat it, or cheat it, quote unquote. I'm not going to use body English there. I'm going to make it more of a strict movement, almost as if I were on a machine. And a strict row definitely has its benefits. There's benefits to movements that both use a little bit of power, as well as movements that are very strict, depending on where you're at in your training cycle and what you're trying to accomplish. And for me, the barbell row done standing without an external limiter, such as a bench, I'm not going to do well with it, because I'm naturally going to try and use body English as the weight gets heavier. So rather than tell myself strict, 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 I'll just change the variation out so I'm forced to be strict. It's kind of the same way that on the bench press, if you're constantly crashing the bar into your chest, you're really sloppy with your setup. Rather than just saying tight, 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 tight over and over and over, what you should be doing is something like a Larson press where you bench press with your feet up in the air, because that's going to force you to slow down, stay tight, and control the weight. Exercise variations aren't just for changing which muscles you work on, but you can also use them to punish bad technique that you have on the main variation of the exercise. And definitely in the future too, if you've got a bunch of questions for me, don't hesitate to hit me up on the community side of my channel. I would love to, that way I have these questions kind of going into the live. That way I can pre-answer them for you as well, Sheeplin. Let's see, you remember the last compound on pull day, so you can use lighter weights if you're hammering first. That's definitely one way of going about it. I can definitely see the utility of that if you are doing kind of, a push-pull leg split. There's definitely, how do I phrase this? I've seen that done where you have your heaviest compound at the end of the workout because it forces you to go lighter. And I think from a pure bodybuilding perspective, especially if you are wanting to avoid potentially hurting yourself, or you're concerned about hurting yourself, or it's a movement that you have a history of hurting yourself, that is a great approach. I personally wouldn't use that approach, but that's just my mindset and how I go about it. Because rather than put the barbell row at the end of the workout, I would sooner just force myself to do a seal row or some other stricter variation of the row. I would rather, in general, just create external limiters, although I suppose what you're doing is an external limiter. In this case, your external limiter is fatigue. But I also know for myself, if I were to do that personally, what would happen is I would just start using body English. Because I'm fatigued, I'm going to say, screw it, I want to get this weight up. Hey, no problem, It's all good, and I thank you for taking the time out of your day to come join me and hang out on the live, Sheeplin. This has been really fun. But like I said, definitely just flood my comment section with questions, and I can answer them on subsequent lives. And if they're a question that I like enough, I could even do a full video on them. It helps me help you and create quality content that you people are going to find helpful. And that's really the thing is, I want to put out content that people want to watch and want to engage with, because that's how you grow a channel, right? Do you have any more questions for me? I'll give you one more. I'm feeling generous, but also I'm having fun. This is nice. I think this actually might be my longest live yet, so that's kind of cool, actually. Do. There are tons of exercises I don't recommend for beginners. I'd say that it's going to be one of those things too. It's a beginner in what context? I'm going to limit this down to, let's say I'm talking about someone who just wants to build general strength and size and maybe is interested in strongman, kind of more of the power builder type. That way we can at least have some framework where it makes more sense. But for that person, exercises I'm not going to recommend for them as a beginner. I will not recommend the behind the neck press. I think they just need to work on basic pressing mechanics. I'm not going to recommend any sort of wild deadlift variation, such as a snatch grip deficit deadlift. Pretty much, I want to keep them one step away from the main lift in all variations I recommend. So with strongman, let's say our 3 main lifts, right, are going to be the front squat, the push press, and the deadlift. I would keep all variations of those movements very similar to the main one. So I wouldn't have them do something such as a paused front squat versus bands, because it's overcomplicated. They're probably not going to know how to set up the bands, and they're not going to reap a lot of benefit from the bands. I'm not really big on bands in general, but that's another conversation. And then in turn for like the push press, I'm going to have them focus on push pressing, strict pressing, close grip bench pressing. That's it. I'm not going to have them do stuff like jerk recoveries, split stance push press, hyper complicated movements. And the deadlift, we're just going to keep it the basic deadlift from the floor, maybe a deficit deadlift. That's all it really needs to be. For a beginner, less is more. Honestly, I wish I could still train like a beginner, because with a beginner, you can do most anything and it will work. And the less complexity you need in your programming to make progress, the better off you will be long term. As far as how I'd recommend a beginner train, again, it's kind of circling back. You just want to train using simple movements that you can progress long-term over time. You don't need much variation, which is nice. You don't need to get very complex, which is nice. Just show up, put in the work, progressively overload. Add weight, add reps. If you want some exercises that I really hate in general, though, we can talk about power cleans. But that's, oh, I could go off on that. Yeah, so beginners, Olympic lifts, power cleans, snatches, stuff like that. Wouldn't recommend them with a barbell. That's smart. That is really smart. Having some sort of limiter like that is a good approach to that, right? You build to it in the future. And personally, rather than doing a snatch grip stiff leg deadlift from the floor, I would rather do that as a snatch grip RDL where you take it from the rack and start at the top and then go down, just because depending on your mobility, you may not be able to do a snatch grip stiff leg deadlift while maintaining a good low back angle. That's just some food for thought there. I do like the stiff-legged deadlift. I don't love the stiff-legged deadlift with a snatch grip from the get-go, though. I don't know. I think with a snatch grip, you're better off starting from the top and turning it into an RDL. But you're going to know your body better than I do, depending on your leverages. Like for myself, I can do a snatch grip deficit deadlift, and it doesn't really affect me that negatively because of my wingspan. Whereas for other people that I work with, I'd be very reluctant to have them do the snatch grip deficit deadlift because they do not have the leverages or ability to get into that position. Yeah, agreed. Clean and jerk it really is. I think Olympic lifts are extremely overrated in general. People give them so much love and attention because they're on the TV. They look cool. CrossFit helped popularize them. No shade on CrossFit. I get why. But I think for the average trainee, something like the power clean is, to be blunt, a waste of time. Please, what are the benefits? What else could I do that's going to give them the same benefits in a fraction of the time? Oh, it's good for explosive strength. Trap bar jumps, box jumps, speed deadlifts, high pulls. Those are all going to build explosive strength as well. Oh, well, it builds your upper back. No bodybuilder uses the freaking clean and jerk in their program. But people love the meme. They look cool and it makes them feel athletic, so they perpetuate. Alrighty, I'm going to wrap up here, Sheepling. Thank you so much for your time. I appreciate your questions. Again, find me over on IG, Coach Mark Estrabio, or just hit the comment section of any of my videos if you've got more questions, and then we can go from there. All right, folks, I am signing off. Y'all have a great rest of your Sunday.